Hi, my name is Ankit Bhargav, Managing Director here at Allele Capital, and would love to welcome everyone to the Antibe Therapeutics Symposium, where we look to learn more about the company, its upcoming trial, as well as the recently completed PK/PD study. Antibe Therapeutics, a Toronto-based company, is dedicated to combating inflammation through its innovative hydrogen sulfide platform. Leveraging over 2 decades of academic and commercial research, Antibe's platform harnesses the distinctive properties of hydrogen sulfide to enhance existing therapeutics. Years of research have uncovered hydrogen sulfide's pivotal role in various biological functions, including promoting antioxidant responses, activating anti-inflammatory genes, and its unique capacity to substitute for oxygen in cellular production. All of this highlights its crucial significance across biology. Join us as we explore the cutting-edge approach of Antibe Therapeutics in addressing inflammation and revolutionizing the field of pain medicine. But prior to our discussion, let's provide some context to set the stage. Acute pain is something we have all suffered from, and the burden of current therapies has been well reported. Currently, the US spends about $85 billion on the opioid crisis, and it's a huge hit on our healthcare system given its addictive properties. Yet, they are commonly prescribed in the post-operative realm, and many physicians would agree that there has just not been much innovation in the past 20 years, and the only thing that we're really using right now is a multimodality approach. On the other side, where opiates are not being prescribed, the gastrointestinal implications of NSAIDs, such as ibuprofen, are gaining traction, as one study reported erosions, ulcerations, and mucosal hemorrhage seen in up to 70% of those consuming NSAIDs and going concomitant video capsule endoscopy. Antibe has leveraged the potential of pain relief of hydrogen sulfide and coupled this with its gastrointestinal protection, develop a new class of oral H2S releasing NSAIDs with its lead compound Otenaproxesul. In pain, studies have shown that Otenaproxesul can slow releasing H2S donors, which inhibit inflammation pain. In our gut, hydrogen sulfide protects against NSAID enteropathy through modulation of bile and the microbiota. This innovation looks to enable physicians to have an alternative to opioids and traditional NSAIDs, with the company entering phase 2 this year in patients with a new formulation homed in to treat acute pain. With that introduction, let's move into our discussion. I'm delighted to present our speakers from Antibe's management team, Dan Legault, CEO of Antibe, and Dr. Joseph Stauffer, former medical review officer for anti-inflammatory and analgesic drugs at the FDA and chief medical officer of Antibe. With our extended heartfelt thanks to both of you for joining, and with your permission, let's dive right into the discussion. So, this is what I was thinking of jumping off with is with the mountain of data that's been supporting the use of H2S in inflammation and other indications, why pain for the first target given the broad applicability of H2S?
It's a great question, Ankit, but first let me say it's a pleasure to be here, so thanks very much for having us. Hydrogen sulfide was actually discovered in the early 90s by the chair of our scientific advisory board, and our founder then went on and discovered that hydrogen sulfide is the body's key mediator of inflammation. I mean, just fascinating. Lou, who is the chairman of our science advisory board, won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for that, just underscoring the importance. And that was John's second major discovery. His first major discovery was being credited with figuring out how NSAIDs, or anti-inflammatory painkillers, cause the ulcers for which they're well known. I mean, as you know, Ankit, pain drugs are the largest category of drugs on the planet, and about half of them are opioids. The other half are the anti-inflammatories like aspirin, Advil, naproxen. For 70 years, they've been known to cause ulcers and bleeding in the stomach and the intestines, a huge problem. John discovers the anti-inflammatory properties of hydrogen sulfide about 20 years ago, and it's now known that hydrogen sulfide is made in every cell of our body, not only for inflammation management, but also for cellular protection and cellular repair. So John reasoned that, gee, if I put these two things together, my two big interests, if I can come up with a molecule that releases hydrogen sulfide and attach that to a pain drug, perhaps I can get a more effective drug, and even more importantly, a safer drug, solve that GI safety problem. It's a $25 billion market for acute pain alone. There has been no new drugs in acute pain in 25 years and a huge medical need. And John's idea worked. Our data is really superb, and it's now a very, very exciting time for us. There's sort of the real answer to your question, Ankit.
No, no, really appreciate that. I think that's a great overview of what really the last 20 years, and then let's call it the last few years, has really culminated to. But on that, you're really looking at the space right now is a lot of opioids and the issues and the NSAIDs, and they are prescribed quite a bit. So really, as you're looking at it, and maybe even Joe, you can give some initial input here, is really what are the deficiencies you're seeing as you guys are progressing?
Sure. So I think you hit the nail right on the head. They are prescribed quite a bit, both the opioids and the NSAIDs, and that's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that we need analgesics for acute pain, post-operative pain, other kinds of pain. But really, the tools in the toolbox are limited to those two classes of drugs, primarily with oral medications, prescription, be they single agent opioids or combination opioids, or NSAIDs. And I don't think I need to tell anybody about the opioid crisis that's out there. You've read about it, you've heard about it. You might have families that have been affected by it. And many of these people who are affected by the opioid crisis, oftentimes, sadly, start off by using drugs acutely for a short-term injury, or say a post-operative pain, a leg fracture that they had fixed, or they had back surgery, or they had their gallbladder out. I mean, these things happen every single day. And so now physicians are trying to limit the use of opioids. And what do they turn to? And appropriately so is NSAIDs, because that's all they have. That the good news is NSAIDs are really terrific analgesics. They're anti-inflammatory, they're analgesic, they're good for pain. The downside about NSAIDs, everyone knows about the chronic exposure of NSAIDs for the stomach, what we used to call, when I worked at the FDA, PUBs, perforations, ulcers, and bleeds. And the reality is that even though we understand the long-term deleterious effects, one of the underappreciated bad effects of NSAIDs is actually ulceration with short-term use. As an example, even 20% or so of the people who will take NSAIDs for just a week can develop a 3-millimeter ulcer. That's a really bad place to be. And that's for anybody who's otherwise healthy. If you think about then people who go to surgery, who might have other concomitant problems, obesity, hypertension, they might already take NSAIDs, they drink alcohol, they might have H. pylori, all these other problems or kind of pre-existing conditions can make that situation even worse when it comes to ulceration. And so what we're trying to do, and one of the big reasons why I joined this company almost 4 years ago, is to really bring to the market something that's better than what we already have. And when I say better, I mean safety-wise, and specifically, angling towards helping people have less of an incidence of ulcerations with short-term use with nonsteroidal. So our compound is novel. It's a next-generation hydrogen sulfide liberating compound, as Dan described from our founder. It's pretty exciting to be here and to get these clinical trials teed up. I think the other thing I should mention too is that when people take medications, be they opioids or NSAIDs for short-term pain, oftentimes they're taking the same dose of medicine on day 3 or day 5 that they took on day 1. And as pain subsides, which is normal, maybe we should think about offering a little bit less pain medication in a tapered fashion as the pain starts to go away. And that's exactly one of the other novel compound, or one of the other novel attributes of our drug that we're going to bring here. It's not just the drug itself, but it's the way that we plan on dosing it. And that is with a prescribed taper.
Yes, I mean, it's really an exciting time for pain. There's Vertex out there coming out with a novel painkiller, and there will be us. There hasn't been a new one in 25 years, as I mentioned, yet. The need has never been greater. There's going to be the No Pain Act out of the U.S. Congress coming to rectify some of those reimbursement imbalances. So the whole world is focused on coming up with a new novel non-opioid pain medicine, and it's such a large market. There's plenty of room, so it's going to be a very, very exciting time for us.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And what you were even mentioning on the opioid crisis as a whole. I mean, let's face it, there's even in JAMA recently, there was a report saying that of the 2 million patients that they followed, they had
Yes.
133,000 of those patients actually still filling opioids post-operative at 90 days later. So I think, Joe, even your commentary there on the need for different dosing for different time, I know even for when I've had patients or even my own father, I mean, it's been a situation where their day 1 and day 30 and day 60, let's talk about it, even day 10, where their pain is reduced, they're still getting large doses of opioids and then the NSAIDs. Really, so if you could even just go a little bit more into what you guys are thinking on the tapering side and the reasoning behind that and how NSAIDs are not even actually used in that methodology right now.
Right. So, and you're correct. Even when I worked back at the FDA 20 years ago in the NSAID division, all the drugs that were coming through our division were what we used to call old wine, new bottle. They were all the NSAIDs that we all know about. They might have had a different salt, maybe a potassium salt or a sodium salt, but all of them still were prescribed every 8 hours, every 6 hours, the same dose every single time for as long as you needed them. And the reality is, you don't really necessarily need to take NSAIDs or even opioids that way for acute pain. Life is different in the world of chronic pain. And so what we've done is we've come up with a dosing paradigm that will deliver 5 to 7 days worth of pain relief over a 5-day dosing course. And if you're familiar with the way that, say, steroids might be tapered, or sometimes even antibiotics are tapered from the beginning until the end. There are certain antibiotics that do that.
Yeah.
We'll do the same thing. And that in and of itself is a novel way to bring pain relief to patients. This would be the only NSAID of its kind that would do that. The other thing to think about too is patient compliance. When you hand somebody a fixed dosing regimen with a built-in taper, they feel confident, or they can feel confident, that there's not going to be an empty bottle or maybe a partially empty bottle of pills of opioids at the end of their dosing regimen. It's, here it is, you take this as directed from day 1 to day 5. It's going to be an every 12-hour dosing, very convenient for patients. So not just once a day, but not 4 times a day either. So patient compliance is a big deal for pain relief as well. So again, the science of hydrogen sulfide liberation from our novel NSAID is part of the key, but the other key is the dosing regimen. And we think that is a welcome thing for patients and prescribers.
Ankit, following on from that, acute pain, you get a broad label for acute pain by doing 2 surgical models, a soft tissue model and a hard tissue model, but then you can address all of acute pain. So the largest part is post-operative pain, and we're coming out with a 5-day pack, as Joe had said, which will provide 7 days of pain relief. But we're also working on a 3-day pack and a 7-day pack to provide 10 days of pain relief. We want to target all of it, not just post-operative pain, but gout, dysmenorrhea, trauma, those sorts of things with the appropriate pack. And we can be able to do that with a very fast clinical pathway. It's a very exciting field, and I think it's going to open up now that we've made this discovery, and as well as Vertex is coming along with their sodium channel blocker as well.
Yeah, no. So I think you guys are really on the right track in terms of the timing. And I know you've made a lot of progress even on the move to this acute pain and looking at it as a very holistic approach.
Right.
And I think the initial study you guys have done, even finishing up last year and leading us into this year, the PKPD study is now into this new formulation. And I would just love to hear a little bit more about the impact of the new formulation, because it does sound exciting in terms of release time and what it can do for patients.
Sure, I can take that. So it was a pretty exciting study. It was a PKPD study in healthy volunteers, typical for a phase 1 study. But what we did was we just didn't dose these patients or these subjects for 1 day or 2. We actually dosed them every 12 hours for 5 days, the exact same way that we're going to dose them in this much larger phase 2 trial in pain coming up here at the end of this quarter. And what we found were a couple things from that trial. Number one, the drug was very, very safe. No matter which dose we gave, the drug was exactly what you would expect to see from any other type of NSAID, because we're in the NSAID class. So that was first and foremost the most important thing. But right after that, we found that the pharmacology was very linear. So the pharmacokinetics were very linear, very predictable, very much like what we saw with our chronic pain formulation. And so we've now, spent a number of months reformulating this drug, specifically targeted to making sure patients have appropriate onset of pain relief within the first hour or so when they take it, just like you would expect with any other NSAID or oral dosed opioid. And linear predictability is a terrific place to be as you move into the phase 2 trial.
That's right. But let's not also forget that all of the data from the previous formulation is also instructive. We have over 8,000 person days on our drug already, over 750 people on multiple day clinical trials. So just a huge body of data. And now with this reformulation to go specifically after onset and faster removal of the drug, just to make it that much safer, it's just that much more tuned for acute pain.
No, I think the initial data really is promising, and I think that's what's getting everybody really excited for 2024. You guys have an upcoming phase 2 trial. It's actually going to also read out this year, and
Yes.
I think the funding aspect sounds great. So I think for a lot of people are interested in really what's happening in 2024 and the trial. So if you just give some color maybe into the timing and the goals and what you're seeing and how you're feeling about it.
Sure.
Sure. So it's a classic old school randomized controlled trial, placebo controlled. It'll be 300 patients, which is a nice, robust, and large size trial. The surgical model we're going to use is an abdominoplasty, also known as a tummy tuck. This is a well understood, well described model for the FDA and for us as well. It's actually been used in prior companies for approval, and we're going to start that trial by the end of this quarter, and we'll read out hopefully in the third quarter. It actually also has an adaptive component within the trial as well, from a statistical standpoint, that would allow us, if we needed to increase the sample size at the halfway point. We all stay blinded. This is an independent data monitoring committee that will guide us through. I've done these kind of trials before. They're quite exciting to set up this way. It's exactly the way we're going to do it here. And again, can't wait to get going. Finally, this is my bread and butter in phase 2, phase 3 land. So happy about that.
That's great. And it reads out in September, a large trial, as Joe had said. And if you add that to the other large trials we had, we will have a very de-risked body of data coming up this fall.
No, I think that's what we're all excited for, and best of luck on all of that. So I think we just have to kind of close out just a few questions that have come in from our friends on the industry side.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't mind just sticking around for an extra few minutes, but the first question that came in is, how do you see the use of Otenaproxesul outside of the post-operative pain space with the phase 2 trial data that's going to be coming out?
Great. It's a great question. As Dan said, we use surgical models in phase 2, phase 3 to get a broader pain label. This is very standard at the FDA. The label will not be for post-operative pain only. It will be for acute pain. That's our intent. This has been done before at the FDA. And so I could see that when this drug is approved, it's not just for surgeons or anesthesiologists to prescribe perioperatively. It would also be for any type of physician who's treating an acute pain. So that would be, say, an ER physician or a primary care physician, someone who's treating a blunt trauma, or maybe even dysmenorrhea, as Dan pointed out. So this is, it's acute pain, but again, the goal here is to give people as much drug as they need and as little as possible for a shorter duration of time as they need it. And so pretty excited that, again, NSAIDs, everyone knows the class, the agency understands it as well, and so do patients actually, and so do physicians and prescribers. So I think you'll see a broader use than just the perioperative world. This acute pain space is quite large from a market standpoint. It's in the multi-billions of dollars, but of course, post-operative pain makes up the lion's share of that.
Right. Yeah. No. And then I guess on that, there is another question that came in, and I'm just going to augment it a little bit, but really, with that change you guys are having to acute pain through post-operative pain, how do you see the dosing of the new formulation, as well as how we're going to view it across other indications?
We're going to continue to use this loading dose, and then followed by the appropriate taper. We really want to nail the various types of acute pain and give doctors the chance to really tune it to their patient. So we will have a broad acute pain label, but we will also specifically come up with easy versions of our drug, which won't require much more clinical work for any of them. So we will come up with, and they'll be based on duration. So our main one will be the one that we're studying now, which is for 7 days of pain relief. And all when you need it. So you need it most up front, and then it tapers. We'll have a 10-day one, and we'll have a 3-day one. And then we were contemplating doing specific trials to actually get certain indications right on the label, even though doctors will be able to prescribe the drug broadly. So we really want to, go after the big medical need and the full $25 billion market for these drugs.
No, that sounds extremely promising, and I think there's enough indications out there in acute pain to really be able to get your hands into quite a few areas. So with that, thanks so much, and thanks for answering those questions. I actually just want to thank you both for your time today and indulging myself and the audience with what's to come for this year in Antibe and the development of Otenaproxesul. We're all really looking forward to hearing further updates. And for those who are interested in learning more about Antibe, please visit their website to learn more. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Giddy up, everybody. It's going to be a fun year.